Welcome to the Ground Pwned podcast, a weekly show for fans of combat sports, gaming, entertainment, and plenty more. I'm Brian Shea, online content director at Game Informer, joined as always by Scott Fontana, New York Post's MMA reporter. There's so much going on this week, and after being in these, kind of a lull these past few episodes, both the gaming and MMA worlds are firing on all cylinders. Scott, what are you looking forward to talking to about this episode?
There's so much, but I think we should start with the games and probably even like state of play from last week, I think is where we ought to hone in on, because there was a lot of stuff that came out of that from Sony and there's a lot of third party stuff as well.
Yeah, so the next couple of weeks, for those who may have missed last episode or aren't really plugged into the gaming world, we're in every June we get a ton of streams that just kind of reveal all these new details. It used to coincide with E3, which is like the annual gaming convention out in LA, but E3 has not happened in person anyway since 2019. And so we're starting to get the first taste of that. PlayStation was the first one to step up to the plate, and I think they did a pretty good job with their stream.
Okay, I actually didn't get to watch it live. I was catching things post fact after, because I remembered it was coming up. And then day got away from me. So
you're like Mr. PlayStation.
I know, but man, life happens, bro.
Crash Bandicoot used to be a PlayStation mascot, and now it's Scott Fontana.
Yes, it is. I walk around in a Scott Fontana suit, actually. If you remember those little commercials where they used to have Crash in the weird suit and he was talking to people. I don't even remember what was going on in those commercials, but that was
usually had like a megaphone. He was yelling up at buildings, and I think one of them was Microsoft.
What was he doing that for? Like, what was the thinking behind that marketing campaign?
I think it was probably a continuation of like the attitude of like the early 90s with Sonic. I think they were like, hey, let's get some attitude up in this place.
It's funny you mentioned that too, and I don't even think I told you this, but I finally watched Console Wars, the documentary, just the other day.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. It definitely was like a Sega focused, like Sega was kind of like the little engine that could, and it was really more about their told almost from their perspective, and like Nintendo was almost like the bad guy they were chasing down.
Yeah, they're the evil empire.
Yeah, it really was like portrayed that way. And
because Nintendo doesn't really give interviews on subjects such as that. Like Tom Kalinske and Al Nielsen, they'll talk about that all day long. Like they love talking about those days. Like,
well, they're the glory days. They don't really have that anymore. So,
I just recently talked to them about it again. Like, it's just like it, and I talked to them about it, I think 6 years ago as well, like for another story that I was writing. So it's like, it's really, I love sitting down with those guys and like hearing all those stories and like seeing that, like, while they can look back and laugh at it now, like there's always just a tiny bit of animosity that exists between like in their minds about Nintendo.
That is fun, because it very much felt like a sports rivalry in a sense. Like they just, obviously there were bigger stakes too in a sense, because like, in sports they're playing for jobs and stuff like that too. But they get to play a child's game. Like this is a company that's trying to make a lot of money for a lot of people. I guess I don't know. It's different, but it had it had that right feel to it.
They really they did the impossible and took on Nintendo back in the early 90s. And that's a huge accomplishment. One of the biggest underdog success stories, I think, in the games industry history. Yeah,
Console Wars definitely portrayed it that way. Like they said that Nintendo had 95% market share or something like that, which sounds insane. Like to think about, like that's probably more than, well, not more than UFC. It's probably at this point UFC probably has most of the market share, but I don't know what that number is. But anyway, it does seem a lot like almost I don't want to say, Bellator or PFL or anything like that, but let's say like some newcomer comes along and all of a sudden they just
Eagle FC, baby.
Eagle FC, sure. Pretend it's Eagle FC.
Suddenly whatever. Eagle FC is like rivaling UFC in like terms of market share.
Yeah. If that happened and they actually decided to have women fight too. Which they should get around to. Come on, Khabib, get on it.
Well, he's made his thoughts known on that.
Yeah, we know. And then that's definitely one of the uglier things about it. But it is what it is. But yeah, so Console Wars, I really did enjoy it. I was glad I finally got around to watching that one.
And you've seen High Score on Netflix, right?
I have, yeah. I had watched that first, actually. I watched that a couple months back.
I like it because if you watch it first, because then like you'll be like, oh, I really like that one episode of like Sega trying to take on Nintendo, and then Console Wars is just a deeper dive into that very like specific subject.
Yeah, it felt like that. I knew some of the story anyway. Like obviously I grew up in that time just like you did, so I remember living through that time where Genesis
does what Nintendo don't.
Yeah. Sega!
Oh my God.
That was a decent one. I think I did decent just
that
right
was,
there. Yeah. Because I was actually
like
after I was watching Console Wars and they were all doing it, they were having fun with it at the end. I was trying it out loud to myself, like a weirdo. Maybe we all do it, and I'm just the one who's admitting it. But yeah, I'm doing it. I'm like, it's not hitting. But then all of a sudden, this one I actually really liked. I was proud of it. And it's on tape. That. You all heard it.
Yeah, there we go. Tape. This is 2022. I don't think it's
we
use
cassettes, sir. I don't know if
we're recording how live I edit to tape.
Things.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're not on this end. I'm the one who takes care of editing our show up. And yes, I have to sometimes flip over the tape and put a new one in.
So Scott, that was what we were playing in the 90s. What are you playing now? Still Cyberpunk?
What am I playing now is definitely Cyberpunk. I'm making progress. I am making headway in this game finally. I'm getting things done. The story is it's more interesting now. I'm definitely, because I think I said in past weeks, if you're just catching up here, I have not had it kind of grip me and be like, man, I gotta play it. It's kind of been like, all right, I got some time. I guess I'll play some Cyberpunk, kind of thing. Lately, I've been trying to find time to play it more. So, but I'm not gonna. I still have a lot of issues with it. A lot of them come down to little technical things, I guess. And I guess I'm still not hyper invested in the story. I don't know. I'm kind of curious where it goes. And there are some, side stories that I've been interested in. Like, I got into one with a character named Panam, who's a nomad. And I've been interested in that kind of, story that I've been working with her along with. So, there's things here and there I'm interested in, but on the whole, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to end up really loving this game or not. I think I'm going to come out of it thinking, and I'm still open to, changing my mind, but I don't know. I think I'll look back and be like, yeah, it was pretty good. And then I moved on and then I never really cared again.
I like Panam. Like, I remember liking that character a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of problems with it. And I was hopeful that they'd be able to fix them through these updates. But who knows? I don't know. It doesn't seem like they're making it a substantially better game. They're making it a better game, but not a substantially better one.
I think I'm more than halfway through, so I think I can give you a really good idea of kind of where the buggy issues are. I don't think it's as much kind of like you're saying with combat, like maybe getting shot through walls. Although sometimes it feels like I'm in a safe spot and I'm really not. I don't know if that's just because I'm really not there, or if maybe like it's what you're saying. I'm actually getting hit in places I
feel like they would have shored that up by now.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to think that it's probably just I wasn't in the right spot. But there's one thing that really, really, really bugs me is that there's a lot of dialogue that will just come along and interrupt other dialogue. Like, and it's not just because there's someone talking off the screen or something like that, somewhere elsewhere. It's like the middle of a conversation, like you can pick an option, and rather than it waiting until that character's finished, they just want to interrupt and keep talking. And it's weird. It should just, if you're prompting me, just let it go after the other person's done talking. That's fine. No one just talks over people like this.
Except on Zoom calls.
It's really annoying. What's that? Sorry, you were talking over me.
I said except on Zoom calls, which is perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
point proven.
I mean, there was a lot of technical problems when I played, as I've said before. How are the characters, like the NPCs, loading into the world? Because that was a big problem with my playthrough, like way back when the game launched in 2020, was characters would load into the world. I just like look into the club, like I'd walk through like that little alleyway with all like the nightclubs and everything.
Okay.
And there'd just be a character standing on top of the couch in T-pose, which for those who aren't familiar, that's like when you just see a character with their arms straight out. And that's because when a lot of video games load their characters into the world, it's in T-pose before the animation takes over, the animation cycle. So like I would just look in the club and there'd be a character with their arms just straight out, standing up completely stiff on top of a couch.
Well, sir, I don't know if you've been to a club lately, but this is
that the hot new trend?
That's how most people stand. It's true. They all just stand there in T-pose and they don't really talk. They just kind of stand there, making sure they take up space. Sometimes they're
out here T-posing in the club.
Their arms, clip into one another once in a while. It's very, very bizarre. No, I haven't honestly observed that in the game. I will say that is not
That's good.
That's not an issue I've encountered. I'm trying to think. There was another little buggy kind of thing that it was more than just like an annoying little bug. It was like something that bothered me. I can't think of it now, but yeah, there's just too much holding the game back still. I don't know. I feel like maybe ambition just got ahead of them on this game. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. But anyway, what about you? What are you playing?
I've been playing Madden NFL 23.
All right.
That's not out yet, as people may know, but like I flew down to Orlando and got my hands on it. This was about a week and a half ago now. And yeah, it's shaping up to be pretty promising, I think. And like I've been pretty down on the Madden franchise the last 2 years. The last two entries are actually the lowest reviewed of any Madden games in the history of the series.
Yeah, I think I reviewed Madden from 2 years ago. What, 21? I guess. I think I reviewed Madden 21 for Den of Geek at the time, and yeah, I was very down on it. I did not appreciate. That was the year that they introduced. I don't remember what they call it, but it was almost like a half-hearted attempt to do a blitz mode. Like an arcade type mode. Yeah, the yard.
Yeah, the yard kind of sucks.
It's not good. It's really not good. And it ought to be better, but they just decided not to try and go very far with it.
They own the Blitz license, which drives me insane. That like, all right, they could have just called it Blitz mode and people would have like latched onto it, I feel like.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But then again, if they had done that and then we played that mode and it wasn't Blitz, how much more mad would it be?
Yeah. And also like it would be very tough to do a separate Blitz engine within that game.
Yeah, no,
it's going to control so differently. But yeah, like they have the Blitz license. It would be cool if they did something with it.
They need to do a lot more with some of their, arcadey type game. I'm actually very like down on sports simulation games at this point in my life. I think it's just if I'm trying to simulate football, I'm going to watch football. If I'm trying to simulate basketball, I'm going to watch basketball. I can't imagine being somebody, and if you are, that's fine. I'm not judging you, but it can't imagine being somebody who sits there and wants to watch competitive 2K basketball. I just want to watch a regular basketball game at that point. I just do, or play it. Being the middle ground seems weird, but either of NBA Jam, which they could entirely bring back if they felt like it, or NBA Street, which they could bring back. And maybe NBA Street is a little more of a product of its time in the sense, I don't know, I guess maybe that coming with the and one mixtape kind of era and that kind of thing. Maybe it was better for its time, but those games were fantastic, especially Volume 2 was honestly fantastic game.
If they just did a Volume 2 with updated graphics, like the exact same game, Volume 2, updated graphics, updated rosters, that's all we would need.
Have you ever played, it's not from them, but did you ever play NBA Playgrounds?
I bought it and I never played it.
Oh, you never played it?
I played one game of it and I was like, this isn't quite what I want.
You know what? And that's fair, but I'll tell you, I've played both of them. I played the original NBA Playgrounds, and then between that time, 2K had bought the studio and everything, the license, so they labeled it 2K Playgrounds, right? And honestly, my cousin and I have had a lot of fun playing that game remotely. It's definitely not Jam. I don't want anyone to think it's going to replace your memories of Jam or anything like that. It's not as good as Jam, but I don't know, man. I have a lot of fun playing it. You and I should play it sometime. Just I'll share play it with you or something, I mean,
I do have I have a copy on, I think, either Xbox or PlayStation. So I don't know if
figure it out. We're going to do this because you and I still haven't played a game together, which to me sounds like disingenuous for us to do this show at this point.
Only the game of podcasting.
That's true. But so anyway, more Madden, please.
Yeah, so they're doing a lot of gameplay changes. They have a new gameplay mechanic called Field Sense, which allows
these names.
Yeah. And it lets you do sharper cuts if you're a ball carrier. Like you hold the left trigger and it suddenly lets him enter like a 360 cuts mode, it's called, where like he can like take like sharper cuts instead of like having to like run in like an arch.
Okay.
Like he can be like running up and like you suddenly see like a running lane's open. You can hold the left trigger and go that way and he'll like cut harder.
Like an actual person would?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, that's nice to know.
The quarterback now has a targeting reticle. So like when you press the button to throw, like when you drop back to pass and you like say, I want to throw to X.
Okay.
You press the X button and a brief, like while he's like winding up to throw, like a little circle will appear on the field. And there's like a targeting thing. So you can choose exactly where you want to place the ball.
Okay. So the idea is it's probably sounds very similar to the way it does it now, where you can kind of lead a receiver, but now there's like a visual representation of it. Is that what I
asked them about that actually, because I was like, well, how much this is just bringing to the surface stuff that's already happening behind the scenes where like players are like already choosing where they want to throw the ball. And they said it's probably a small percentage of both, where like they're bringing forward stuff and also allowing you to be more precise.
Okay. All right, so I like that. Actually does sound kind of cool.
There's a circle that appears, and if you go anywhere within that circle, your receiver is guaranteed to have a chance to catch the ball.
Okay.
If you hold the left trigger, that same left trigger that lets you do the cuts as a runner, you can go outside of that circle and take a bigger risk. Like I was throwing like lob passes to my guy, like way downfield. Like I would just like have him run like a fly route, and I would throw a lob pass and then hold the left trigger to throw it further beyond it. And I was trying to throw it so high that he could still run underneath of it and catch it. And a couple times my guy, like Lamar Jackson, completely overshot the receiver when I used that. But like another time, like he hit the guy and like the guy actually ran under it, like Willie Mays caught it and ran it in for a touchdown. So like I could see the value and like the risk reward there.
You know, I actually kind of even like the idea that you can like massively overthrow a receiver like that, because we watch football. Like that happens. Sometimes Cam Newton just doesn't know how far, and I'm saying Cam Newton because I'm a Panthers fan. He's not going to be a quarterback this year, at least a starting quarterback. But anyway, he was known for overthrowing a lot of receivers. He put a little too much mustard on his throws, and sometimes it's just way downfield. No matter how fast the receiver is, it's just a bad throw. In Madden, that doesn't really happen or hasn't. So that's interesting. There's almost I almost like the idea that there's more control over being bad too. Yeah, like, that's okay.
So the other thing that I've really noticed on like in terms of gameplay is that they figured out, at least to an extent, how to contain mobile quarterbacks.
Okay.
So like I was playing as Lamar Jackson, because I'm a Ravens guy. So I was playing against one of their gameplay designers, and he was like, hey, like we try to scramble with Lamar. So, you know, the iconic scramble in Madden is you roll out to the right sideline, and then it's like you can either take off or you can pass. Mm-hmm. And so now the defensive line and anybody coming in a blitz is a lot smarter with the way they approach a quarterback. And like, especially a mobile quarterback. And as soon as you hit that scramble button and like the defense realizes it, they'll start converging. And like, it was really difficult for me to escape the pocket. And then like, aside from just going up the middle, which he's like, I'll take that. If you're going to try to go up the middle as a quarterback, like and he did cause like 3 fumbles over the course of like the game that we were playing with Lamar trying to scramble up the middle.
This sounds like exactly what fans of Madden 04 don't want to hear, because anyone who played with Michael Vick at that point, it's like, man, I want God mode Michael Vick from Madden 04. This sounds like it is the kryptonite to God mode.
Well, they Michael also made it so that there was a ability called escape artist that the best scrambling quarterbacks.
That's right. They have they're not, what do they call them? The superstar.
There's superstar traits.
That something like that. Yeah.
But this I don't know what, like, there's so much nomenclature involved with this, but like,
yeah, they love nomenclature. Like I
don't want to get it wrong, but like they called it an ability. But it was just so overpowered. It was like broken, because like a scrambling quarterback would just like run away, and like it gave him like additional speed if he was getting out of like a pocket. Mm-hmm. And so they made that an X factor, and they nerfed it. So it's going to be less powerful and used less frequently. So like they're hopefully remedying that as well, because that was like borderline broken on online matches.
Yeah. You hate to see that kind of stuff. I don't really play online anymore. Like I said, I'm kind of moving away from a lot of simulation sports games at that point. But there's, I'm sure, a lot of, especially who are more fight fans, or maybe even fighters, they're probably playing Madden, right? Maybe some of them are playing Madden. So yeah, where do you feel like, and obviously you're playing an early version, it's probably not even beta at that point, or maybe it's close to beta or something, but where do you feel like the efforts were on their part, that the kind of stuff that they're saying to you, do you feel like it's actually going to affect your experience in like a positive way? Or, I mean, it's hard to say at this point. I know,
it is. But yeah, like I haven't played the final version, but franchise mode seems like it's coming along really nicely. Like there's a new free agent hub. There's a new like motivation system. So like, say you're a star wide receiver, and like one of your motivations could be like, oh, I want to play with an elite quarterback. And if you have a franchise quarterback on your team, that makes you more likely to sign that player, because their motivation is, I want to, like, if I have Lamar Jackson on my team and there's a guy who wants to play with a franchise quarterback, that will automatically give me a little bit of an extra chance to sign you.
Okay.
Or like,
that's actually good to know.
Or like if you went to school, like say you went to University of Maryland for college, and one of your motivations is you want to play close to home, that gives the Ravens a better chance to sign as you hold up your University of Maryland hat.
I have a University of Maryland hat because I am a Terps fan in college sports.
Awesome. Yeah. You and my dad.
No one can see along. That. Yeah. I bet we would. I bet we would in general. He seems like a cool dude.
He is a cool dude.
I'm going to hang out with him one time. I'm not even going to tell you.
Yeah. Come on over.
I'll just find him somehow. He's in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, he's in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's close. I'll go.
And then what else? There's like, yeah, so like one is like if you want to play close to home, it'll take into account like their college or like their hometown.
Okay. Yeah.
And then there's another one like it even goes like, all right, I want to play with like a state with no income tax.
That really should be one. That should be.
It is. They said great. It was, which
that's
is
really that's actually really smart. I like a lot of these changes I'm hearing. Yeah.
So that's one of the free agent things, and then other players will have things like tags, like the franchise quarterback is a tag that a player can accumulate over the course of a career. Like even if like you come into the league as like a quarterback prospect, and then like you have like amazing year after amazing year, you suddenly become franchise quarterback. You acquire a tag. It's not just like you come into it with a tag. And then another one's like if you get like older in your career, you can develop the mentor tag, and that what that does is that gives every player in your position group extra experience points for every game that you play together.
That's cool.
So yeah, there's like little things like that will affect free agency and will give you like extra value. Like oh, I want to like bring in Tom Brady because he has like the franchise quarterback tag and also the mentor tag. And it's like, all right, now he's going to make everybody in the backfield have extra experience because he's like mentoring them, or like everybody in the quarterback position is going to progress faster because they have Tom Brady.
You know, while you're describing this game and kind of a lot of stuff that they're updating, it kind of gets in my head to how like a lot of years, there's always like that big back of the box thing or a couple big back of the box things. And most of the time, at least me as a gamer in past years, and I think a lot of my friends too who play Madden, they're like, I'm not interested in that. I really just want the game to be good, you know. And I'm almost at the point now that I would be more suspicious if there were more big box, like back of the box stuff, because it sounds like those type of things you can't put. These guys turn the game over so quick every year. They're on a clock, you know. There's only so much they can get done. So if they're working on these big things, how much time are they giving to the smaller stuff? So when you're describing all of this like smaller things that sound like around the edges, that actually makes me more interested in Madden than if they had like that big new feature, you know?
There's a ton of small little things like that. Like there's some bigger things, I guess. Like I think the gameplay system is a pretty big one, but like face of the franchise is redone. Now you can you're coming into the league as like an established NFL player, so you're not playing through high school and college anymore.
Okay,
which I think is setting them up for the return of NCAA football.
Okay, yeah,
because they've already announced that's coming at some point in the next few years.
Yeah,
so I think what they're doing is
that's this amorphous sometime down the road.
I think that's the beginning of the transition.
Okay.
But yeah, like it seems like they're taking a lot of smaller things. They said that actually they took a different approach to developing this year's game. They instead of jumping right into development after they wrapped on 22, they said they took a little bit of time off and they actually like did a gathering of feedback thing where they went on like Reddit and Twitter and like all these forums and everything and gathered all the feedback. And they said before they even entered production, they fixed like thousands of issues with last year's game. And then when they started development, they identified like thousands of other issues and then fixed those as well. He was like, yeah, I can't tell you we fixed everything, but we fixed a lot of stuff.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Like, I think realistic people can't sit there and say, okay, they're going to fix literally everything that you didn't like about the game. Because first off, you know, there's going to be so many people who just have that. It's impossible. It's a Sisyphean quest, right? You can't really get that done in your lifetime. And if you do, it's like, well, you're just creating more stuff. There's always more things to do. So it's just never going to happen. But yeah, to hear that they really focused in on a lot of that stuff. And that's where we want the game, I think, to be. It's a lot of the bones of the game seem like they're kind of just where they're going to be, right? How much more innovation can they put into Madden without literally blowing the whole thing up and trying again? And that's not a great start.
You know, I think it goes back to FIFA, like when we were talking about that, where it was like the developer basically outright said that like this is like to let us be more creative with like how we portray the game of soccer.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think like the NFL is probably restricting some of the stuff that they want to do, you know?
Yeah, I imagine that's part of it, but I do think a lot of it just is the simple fact that they come up with the same game every single year, and it's there's no way that they're not going to put out a new Madden game every August. So you're on a clock. They can't delay the game. How many games do we have that get delayed now? You know, they don't even have the luxury of even trying to do that because it has to get done. So they're limited by, I imagine, the amount of time they're sitting there. They know it's a clock. They're like, all right, what can we realistically get done in X time? And now we have so many games too. When they release, there's glitches, and I'm not even talking about Madden specifically. I'm talking about every game. There's glitches. There's all this stuff to varying degrees. Cyberpunk we talked about is very an extreme end of the terrible end of that. But you know, then there's every year we get Madden, and then you know, for the first couple of weeks we see all these like goofy glitches and things like that. That becomes like the thing with Madden. You just see all these goofy like visual glitches and stuff. And how can you get everything done in that time frame? So I feel for the developers of those games. I've spoken to them before. I know the challenges that go into that, but it's nice to hear once again that they're really trying to get all like the nitty gritty stuff that I think are actually going to affect the way you play the game.
Yeah, and that's my hope as well. Is like it's going to be a better playing game. It's going to be a more polished game. Because that was another big problem with last year's title was so glitchy. Like, yeah, I would load into the yard or I'd load into like a different mode, and like the characters like clothes would be like glitching out. It's like, all right, they did not play test this, or they didn't like get the fixes in before
they didn't have enough time. Probably, yeah.
Well,
I imagine probably by like not September, but more like November or stuff like that. I imagine almost all of these things are kind of ironed out, but you need that extra time. And if you're expecting people to buy the game day one, they're going to find that stuff very quickly.
Yeah. So that's kind of like what I've been playing really. Cause I've been checking out Madden, and I've been doing a lot of, work for work. So
yeah, no, of course. And I'm sure you've got things that you're working on. You can't really talk about yet. You're always top secret agent over there with the games. And I know how it works. Embargoes are embargoes. But yeah, I look forward to hearing about anything else you might be playing in the future.
I wasn't playing this, but we talked about this last episode, and that we were going to like give my brief impressions of this game this episode because it comes out this Friday.
Ooh, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Mario Strikers Battle League.
Yes. So obviously, like you said, it's coming out this week. What do you think of your time with it pre-release?
So it looks like a very fun game. Like, I mean, if you have ever played a Mario sports title, you probably know what to expect. Like it's very much a Nintendo arcade style take on the game of soccer. Like you're kicking a ball around. Obviously your mission is to score more goals than the other team, but there's like Mario Kart style power-ups. Like you can throw shells at each other, you can throw bombs at each other, and you can just tackle the hell out of each other, and push each other into electric fences. But yeah, like it's at the end of the day, it's the game of soccer, and it's 5-on-5, but you can do one of those players is the goalie. So it's 4-on-4 multiplayer. If you want to do 8-player multiplayer, you can. But yeah, it's just like a super fun game of soccer. And it's like, there's Hyper Strike, which is like a super move that you can get, like almost think of like Super Smash Brothers when like you get like the smash ball, and you get their ultra or ultimate smash, and like it's like a special move that's like cinematic in nature, and like if you time your shot right, it's unblockable, and if it goes in, it's worth 2 goals. So like if you don't time it right, then it's like there's a little mini game that happens between the goalie and the team that shot.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, like, you know, there's a cup mode where it's like tournament style. And as you play through more cups, there's that. And there's also Strike Club, I think it's called. But
that sounds like a good fighting game, actually. Strike Club.
It's on it's online, and you make a team of 20 players. So like you, me, and 18 of our closest friends join a team together.
Oh, like real players. Not, I thought you were going to say like Donkey Kong.
No. So you go in to this online league and you play against other people in your league, and then based like the best players at the end of the season will progress to the next league, and the worst players will drop down to the one below it. But because there's 20 people on your team, everybody, it just needs to be 4 players total in order to play a game. So that's kind of smart to design around the fact that like maybe your entire team's not going to be available.
Yeah, actually, that's really smart.
So it's like as long as you, me, and our 18 closest friends have 4 people total to play, we can jump into a game together against another team.
Man, they ought to take a cue from that in some other sports games. I feel like that would, because man, I tell you, like I'll be ambitious. I'm like, I want to start playing an online franchise or something like that with a bunch of people. Like I actually got, do you know Mac Malley, the MMA Twitter account?
No,
you don't know? Oh, he's fun follow. He plays games and he plays a lot of sports games and things, right? He's got like 100,000 followers or almost that. But
I think like Twitter would be unusable at that point.
Well, he was actually joking the other day, or I don't know if he's joking, but he's like, I might just blow it up and start over from scratch. No one like me should have 100,000 followers. He's a fun account, but I played MLB The Show with him before, and I did beat him. I hold a win over him in home run derby, and he plays a lot more than me, so I'm kind of proud of that one. But yeah, I was gonna jump in with him and a bunch of other randos, I guess, in a MLB The Show online league, and I joined, and then I definitely didn't play. I'm sure it was my fault that it didn't happen. But man, if I just had like other teammates or like someone else I could coordinate and be like, yo, do you want to play this one? I'll play the next one or something like that.
Tag me in.
Yeah, there really ought to be something like that. So it's interesting to see if anybody. I wonder if any other like simulation
like
sports games.
I thought franchise could be co-managed in Madden.
Well, maybe it can, because again, I could be wrong. I haven't played as much, but 2K would be where I really want it, because like you could play, 2 of you could play in NBA 2K, or just one of you or something like that. I feel like that would be the easy one to do it with.
Well, MLB has co-op this year.
I've heard that. Actually, I think Mac Malley was asking me if I was going to get it for that reason, and I didn't. I still don't have it. Look, you know that MLB The Show always drops to $20 at some point mid-season. When I see it drop to $20, I might jump on it. But
or you should just get the Xbox version and play on Game Pass at no additional cost.
I could do that, except then I would have to buy an additional cost Xbox. But that's where the issue lies. Although I keep joking with my wife that she should get me an Xbox for my birthday.
Xbox is like a really worthwhile purchase if you plan on subscribing to Game Pass. But,
yeah, that's the one thing that really kind of gets me is like, man, Game Pass really does have a lot of stuff. So there's probably a day where I will finally bite the bullet and get an Xbox, but we're not there.
Well, Xbox did not have their stream yet. Xbox and Bethesda have theirs, I think, this Sunday, but PlayStation had theirs.
Yes, we mentioned it earlier, and then we got completely off topic. We should talk a little bit more about this. Like, I'll tell you. Can I actually lead with the one that I was most interested coming out with?
Sure.
Coming out of that was Street Fighter 6, and I think that's on brand for us too as a fighting and gaming podcast. This really is the perfect merger of our two worlds, the World Warrior, so to speak. Yeah, I knew this game was coming. I mean, we all knew it was coming. They already said that they were basically at the end of their DLC for Street Fighter 5, which they supported for many years.
And they finally got it right. Like it was in rough state when it launched. Like I remember reviewing it and being so excited for Street Fighter 5. Like, oh my God, I'm reviewing a Street Fighter game. Like this is incredible. And then I played it and I'm like, there's like nothing here. And I think I gave it like a 7.25. And
there was nothing beyond the gameplay, right? I think the gameplay was very tight. I actually really did like that part of it. But yeah, I reviewed it for AM New York, the newspaper I used to be at. And that, I think I had the same thought. I think I gave it like a 2.5 out of 4 because we had a weird 4-star scale that I really hated.
It's like an old like Roger Ebert movie rating scale.
That's exactly where it came from. And I really hated it. I have no problem saying that. But yeah, it was the same thing. Like you really liked the way it played, but what else could you do? Not a whole lot.
And then they added a story mode, and I'm like, all right, this is what I wanted. And then I played it, and I'm like, that was underwhelming.
I did not love the story mode either. Man, honestly, just copy what Mortal Kombat does. Just rip them off. It doesn't matter. Just do what they do because that's actually fun. People liked that. But you can do that with your Street Fighter crazy, goofy world. I love the Street Fighter world to they do fun things there.
And you know what? It's this one is no longer a PlayStation exclusive because Street Fighter 5 was a PS and PC exclusive, and this one is coming to Xbox as well.
It wasn't. I didn't even remember that it wasn't on Xbox. You're right, man.
Yeah. Whenever I play Street Fighter on Xbox, because I mean, up to I guess not recently. I actually did not like the Xbox D-pad at all.
Okay.
And they finally fixed it with recent controllers, and it's like I finally can play I could play Ultra Street Fighter 4, but I couldn't play Street Fighter 5 now that I finally had like a good D-pad.
Right.
And my voice is failing me now, so apologies.
Oh, that's all right. Get your little drink of water there.
Yeah,
that's okay.
A little thirsty boy.
That's right.
So, the D-pad is finally good on the Xbox controller, and it's like, but I want to play Street Fighter 5 on it now. And I'm also, just like you like trophies, I really like the sound of the achievement unlocked. Like it's just a good sound.
I don't even know what the achievement sound is. That's how little Xbox I've played.
Years. So it's even more satisfying now, especially if it's a rare achievement. They give like a little bit of like a little like extra flourish in the sound.
Okay. See, that's the one thing that I feel like PlayStation never got was like an added thing for getting the platinum trophy. They don't really do it. But what you would get is you'd get that last trophy and then you get like a second sound. It's like, okay, I got that and then I got the next one. But there wasn't anything necessarily special about that. Really, you know what they should do? Just make a bunch of glitter come across the screen or something like that. Make that an option that I get some sort of like goofy celebration there. I want that. I would actually take that.
Your PlayStation blasts paint all over your living room.
Yeah, whatever. That's fine. Just make my living room.
Every PS5 comes loaded with like 75 charges of paint explosions. They just assume nobody's ever going to get more than 75 platinums.
No, I'm serious though. Like something that just like you could even toggle it off. Like if you find that annoying, fine. But like someone like me who's actually hunting trophies, like there's it's not like it's interrupting your gameplay because you're
platinum is a big deal.
The last trophy isn't you finishing the game. It never is, unless it's like, one of those games that really has nothing except you just got to complete the game. There are a few of those. Telltale does that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think my first ever like 1,000 gamer score, which is basically the Xbox equivalent of a platinum, was Fight Night round 3, I think, because like there was like 5 achievements, 200 gamer score each, and it was like become heavyweight champion or something like that, and I was like, all right. I got that. And then it was like win 5 matches online. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'll do that too.
I know. Yeah. It's a lot of that type of stuff.
It was the early days of the achievements. Cause remember, Fight Night Round 3 was one of the first games on Xbox 360 when they first introduced achievements. So it was like, they were still figuring it out. Like some places were doing like how many, like a bunch of achievements for like 5 gamer score each, and then other ones were doing like just 5 of 200. And I think there was one that actually just did like 1 achievement for 1,000 gamer score.
Can I tell you that I actually still like in my head want to go back and play, let's say, Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots, because they added trophy support later. So I have no trophies for it. And I actually kind of just want to go back literally just because I want to have trophies that say you played through this game. Just to prove it.
We have a problem.
Yeah.
So you know what game is exclusive to PlayStation and PC this time around? That was also on that state of play. Final Fantasy 16.
Okay. Yeah, that I watched the trailer for that. It looks fantastic, but you just beyond like a couple little clips of hits and things like that, like X13, 13, that I don't know what's going to be.
Yeah, that's the thing is like it looks great. And I am kind of putting my trust in Naoki Yoshida, who is the director of this one. He is the guy. I mean, if you remember Final Fantasy 14, I think, what was it? 14
is the MMO, right?
Yeah. So it launched in a terrible state. I want to say it was 2012 or 2013.
I remember it being like a great redemption tale, this game.
And yeah, that's one of the all-time great like comeback stories, like that, No Man's Sky, and a couple
like
others
real world redemption story. We're not talking about in the game. We're talking about like actual success of the game.
Like it launched and like they basically canceled the game, and then Naoki Yoshida came in and fixed it, and they re-released the game as Final Fantasy 14 Realm Reborn.
Right.
And then it's become probably the hottest MMORPG on the market today. Like it's just a really, really beloved RPG. And like every time there's a new expansion, like my timeline is just blown up by it. You know who loves that game?
Who was that?
Or at least at one point he did. Demetrius Johnson.
I believe it. Yeah.
He was talking to me about that. And I was like, dude, I wish I knew what you were talking about. I've never played this game. And like I felt bad because I think he thought I was like blowing him off. But I was like, we have like, because he was there to shoot a video with us at Game Informer, and we were just like on the topic, and like we were just rolling on games. Like we gave him the tour of the office, and then we were just chatting for like 2 hours. And I was like, dude, I know you have a thing in like an hour and a half. We got to go shoot this video. Like I felt like I interrupted him, like, hey, we got to go shoot this video. He's like, oh, okay, cool, let's do it. Like
I'm sure he probably knows himself. He probably knows he can get carried away talking about games. That's fine.
I loved it though. I love seeing him in that element because, like, the only time you ever see him, unless he's streaming, is he's usually being interviewed about fights.
Sure, and
so it's nice to see
when
him
I talk to him. That's typically
element.
what I'm doing. Although, actually, it's kind of almost split. I've talked to him about fights, and I've also talked to him about video games. So, for work purposes, that's going to be the funny thing.
Yeah, he's always a great interview, no matter what you're talking to him about.
But let me ask you this: as obviously you mentioned Final Fantasy, I mentioned Street Fighter 6, which I'm interested in, even though we didn't see a lot of actual gameplay of that either. And I don't even know which characters are going to be in it. Better be Cammy. If Cammy's not in there, I'm going to be mad.
I saw a leak that had like all the characters that were like apparently going to be in the game. I don't think Cammy was in it.
That's getting scary.
It seemed like there were a lot of characters they were reserving for DLC. Like it seemed like we had like a lot of the characters from like Street Fighter 2 Turbo, but not Super Street Fighter 4 or Super Street Fighter 2. So like Cammy, DJ, Fei Long, all those characters seem like they were absent.
I have heard that we may never see Fei Long again.
Oh no, because like the Bruce Lee stuff.
Because of the Bruce Lee thing, yeah.
He was in Street Fighter 5. He was a DLC character.
Is that right? Someone had told. Look, take this with an extreme grain of salt here, because I think I saw this on social media. Okay, so let us not put a whole lot of stake into this, but it would not surprise me if that actually did happen. And that would be unfortunate, but I guess I sort of get it because they legitimately are trying to play off of Bruce Lee there.
Uh-oh. He was in Street Fighter 5, but as a non-playable character.
See, there you go. Yeah, I don't know.
Starting to unravel. You were going to ask me what else did I want to talk about on this?
Yeah, what other stuff really kind of jumped out at you? I guess
I got 3 for you.
Okay.
First up, Resident Evil 4 remake. It's been rumored forever. It's been leaked like 27 times. Finally happening. These Resident Evil remakes, which started with Resident Evil 2, they're incredible. Like they're just bringing them to the current generation of consoles. These are games from like PS1. Resident Evil 4 was on like
PS2 generation, right?
GameCube, PS2, like that generation, and then it was brought forward to the Wii. And like a lot of people consider the Wii version to be the best version.
Okay.
However, like if we get a full-on remake and like the graphics they were showing looks incredible, I'm excited for that because like the gameplay, I know a lot of people have a lot of love for that game. I feel a lot of people think that's the best Final Fantasy Resident Evil game.
Mm-hmm.
But the gameplay has not aged super well for 2022. So I'm excited to see that game and like what they do with that and make it actually feel like a game that belongs in this era.
Let me tell you, I'm not a horror fan. Like I don't play horror games, period. I don't watch most horror movies. There are some that'll kind of get me. I'm not really into like, the Insidious or any slashers and things like that. I like more, if I like horror, it's hard to put my finger on it. It's kind of has to be like very classic type of stuff. Like The Shining is, I think, pretty interesting to me. The Thing is probably the one that I jump out at as my favorite horror movie. Okay. So I think that's actually a very interesting one. There's something more to it, right? It's not just the goal isn't just scare you for 80 minutes, 90 minutes or whatever, and then you move on. Like I there's something more to that movie. So, but yeah, I'm not really a horror guy. But what I do like about like what you're saying with like these final, I almost did it too, with these Resident Evil games and the way they're remaking them is they're taking those games that are the gameplay has not aged well, like you said, or maybe the game isn't even very available anymore. Those ones are.
Yeah, I'd say Resident Evil 4 is an extremely available game.
Widely available, but a lot of these games like that I would like to see them do it with are not. And I would like to see them kind of revisit these things. Like we mentioned Siphon Filter is going to be available from PlayStation 1 version. That's going to be available to play as part of PlayStation Plus's kind of relaunch in the mix of PlayStation Now and everything all into one thing, which is coming very soon. I think it's sometime this month. It might even be next week, but a game like that, you could take that. I'm not even saying it has to be Siphon Filter, but like take that game and then make it for like they're doing for modern gameplay, modern sensibilities, modern gamers, that kind of thing. There's a lot of gamers who just never played Siphon Filter. They never will. They're not going to go back and play PlayStation 1 Siphon Filter. Make that game again, remake that game or another game. Of course, it doesn't have to be that.
We're seeing a lot of it.
I've never actually played Siphon Filter, so I don't actually have like that much of attachment to it. But the point is,
Legend of Dragoon.
Yeah. Thank you, Legend of Dragoon.
Make it happen.
Absolutely, I'm with you on that one. Yeah,
they're doing it with Final Fantasy VII. They're doing it with They did it with Spyro the Dragon and Crash Bandicoot, even though those were more like just like visual overhauls. They did it with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2.
Right. Yeah,
those were actual remakes.
Exactly. I want like actual legit remakes. I don't want reskins. I don't want that kind of thing. I want legit remakes and of certain games, right? And I think the game that I really want most of all is Metal Gear Solid 1. I think you could make that game again, and I think it would just be fantastic.
Did you ever play Volume?
No, I don't know what that is.
So it's from Mike Bithell, who is, I'd say, one of the most consistently awesome game designers.
I played it. I played one of his games.
There was a game called Thomas Was Alone.
Game. No, it wasn't that one I played, but anyway.
But yeah, so this was I believe his second game, and it's very much a modern day homage to MGS1.
Okay. Interesting.
Where it's like kind of like the isometric view, and you're going through and trying to sneak through like a maze, basically. But yeah, I recommend that game. I reviewed it for us. There were some problems at launch, which caused my score to be a little bit lower. I'm looking up how much it is on Steam because, I mean, it's on PlayStation as well, I believe.
I played a game called Republic one time that was it seemed kind of similar to what you're describing, where you're like kind of moving someone through in that isometric view, right? That kind of thing. I was into it for a little while. I never actually completed the story of it, but it kind of had me. There's something about that world though, that Metal Gear Solid world, that I think you could revisit that one and it's just going to be more interesting anyway, because you already have the attachment to all these characters.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, I'm looking at Volume right now. It's $20 on Steam, so I'm assuming it's that on PlayStation. But I completely forgot about the game until you said you wanted a modern remake of Metal Gear, and I was like, oh man, you should just play Volume. Like, not that that's going to replace it, but like, it's an updated version. It's like, oh, these guys played Metal Gear Solid,
right?
And then they wanted to make a game that's an homage, but they do it pure stealth. Like, there's no combat whatsoever.
Okay, I mean, you know what I like, real quick on Cyberpunk, I have been playing almost all of my missions as stealth, trying to sneak through like the different, dungeons, for lack of a better word, trying to get out trying to either extract what I need to, or just take out all of the guys that are in there. Like, anytime I get spotted, I'm just like, I don't really want to engage with this. So I'll just reload my, my recent game save and just kind of go through it again. And I'll do quick saves just to make it easier. Cause that's how I want to engage it at this point. I think we talked last week a little bit about I'm not really into shooting right now. So, and even in general, like, I really do just kind of like stealth. I like Hitman. Hitman's the game that I like to play. So yeah, I'd rather sneak around and not get spotted.
There's two more for you that I got. Yeah. There's some news. Spider-Man games coming to PC. So both Spider-Man and Miles Morales are coming to PC finally.
There's one for the PC Master Race.
Yeah, there you go. And a lot of people immediately brought up, I can't wait to see the mods that people do.
Oh yeah, so that'll be fun.
That gets me excited. Like, just like replace the actor's face with like Tobey Maguire or something.
Or replace Spider-Man with Batman.
Oh, there you go.
Because Batman obviously slings through the city in a different way.
He does. I've got two more for you. Rollerdrome.
I don't know this one.
Like a blast. It looks like it should be a multiplayer game. Like, it's a game where like hyper stylized visuals, and you're basically rollerblading around this skate park, but it's a sport where you're rollerblading around doing these tricks almost like Tony Hawk, but then you have a gun in your hand and you're shooting the other people in the roller rink. And like, it's almost like a Mad Max style, like, battle royale within this roller rink, and you just like trying to be the last one standing.
What a giant mashup of different things you've described to me.
But it's not a multiplayer game. That's the thing, is it looks like it should be a multiplayer. They said they were very clear that it's a single player title, and it's from the company that made Ollie Ollie. If you ever played those.
Yeah, I know Ollie Ollie.
So like, this is their first new franchise in a long time, maybe ever. Since Ollie Ollie.
Ollie Ollie being a skating game, if people haven't played it.
A 2D skating game. This is a 3D rollerblading combat game. So I'm excited for that. That looks like so much fun. Like, you're like doing backflips, then like as you're like coming down, you can like slow down time and choose your target and everything. Like, it looks like a lot of fun.
It almost sounds like the way the studio is jumping from 2D to 3D. It kind of reminds me of when I forget the name of the developer was who jumped from Resogun to Returnal. Thank you, Housemarque, because I like them. It sounds similar to that. Like, they're jumping into a new territory, and it actually worked out really well for them. So maybe this will too.
It looks like really cool. I'm excited for that one. And then finally, another scary game, Callisto Protocol. This is a game that I actually wrote our last cover story on.
Yes, you did. I remember.
And this is our first real look at gameplay from a public perspective. I've seen about 35 minutes of gameplay behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
This was our first look at like gameplay in the game itself from a public perspective, and we got a release date, which is early December.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm this being a horror game, I'm not that interested, but I did watch the trailer for it just because I knew you'd written about it, and when they put that out there, I said I should watch this, and I was like watching it, and I'm like, this definitely seems like there's like a Dead Space feel to it.
Well, yeah, I guess the creator of Dead Space.
Okay, well that makes sense. But they're putting out a Dead Space remake like what, the month later, right?
Yeah, and I asked him about that actually, and he was like, I have mixed feelings on it because on one point, like they're coming in, they're trying to make a game that I created better without me, and it's like it's so weird to like kind of see that like your creation move on without you. But on the other hand, it's like I have so much love for that series. I want to see it live on, so I hope it's successful. Like that was kind of like. It was an interestingly candid thing. Like normally, like when you would ask somebody about that, like they'll be like, oh, I wish him the best. Like it's great.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
But it was nice to hear him say like, and he also acknowledged that like he was resistant to the idea of putting out a game like this because this is his new studio that he founded.
What is his name again? I'm sorry,
Glenn Schofield.
Okay.
And his studio now is called Striking Distance Studio. He also co-founded Sledgehammer Games under Activision, which is known for Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, Call of Duty World War II. They just put out Call of Duty Vanguard. I mean, he was not involved with that, but he co-founded that studio, and he ran EA Visceral for the longest time, which is the company that made Dead Space back in the day. But he was like, he had this like idea. And he was like, oh man, but that's so close to Dead Space. And then he thought about it and he was like, I think it was Picasso that said like the best artists steal. And he was like, why don't I just steal from myself then? He's like, there's nothing wrong with that. So he's like, I guess I'm not going to be resistant to this idea anymore. I'm just going to embrace it and just be like, all right, well, this is my chance to do it without any compromise. Like I'm the one running the show now, so I can do it how I want to do it.
I feel like there's room for many different space horror games and not just one, because we have many different space horror movies and not just one. So yeah. I don't see any problem with it. Yeah, I saw someone the other day, and actually I kind of want to wrap up on games now and switch over to fights.
To get over to the fighting side.
But what I do want to say is that I did see someone kind of tweet the other day, like they're tired of seeing like all these medieval type set video games. Someone saying this on social media, and I'm like, you know what? You're kind of right, but also, what else do you want? Like, because there are other choices out there. I don't know what's an underserved kind of setting, I guess, for a video game. I would say the only thing that I've thought to myself is that the genre, the Soulsborne games, right? Most of these Soulsborne games take place in almost a very similar type of setting and that kind of thing. And it's like maybe put one in space, maybe put one in like, I don't know, the time of the dinosaurs, and there's a person there. I don't care why, but like, well, put them in different places. Like we don't have that.
Bethesda. Bethesda has been making Elder Scrolls and Fallout games since what, 2006? Like that's all they've done, probably since before that. Since before that, Bethesda Game Studios. I'm not talking about the publisher Bethesda. I'm talking about like the actual internal Bethesda studio. They've basically been making Elder Scrolls and Fallout games, and that's been like their bread and butter for probably two and a half decades at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And they're finally doing Starfield. Like, so they're doing what you're saying. Like, they're taking that formula, presumably. I haven't seen the game. Presumably it's going to be the same formula as Fallout and Elder Scrolls, but they're taking it to space. So it's like, all right, cool. Let's see what they can do there.
I think one of the things that keeps me from the Soulsborne games, it's not the difficulty challenge, but it's just like Elden Ring and Bloodborne and Dark Souls and all these games. Maybe they're different when you play them, but on the surface, they look reasonably similar in terms of their setting. And I want something drastically different.
Go check out Sekiro.
I played Sekiro. I played it a little bit, and I went away on vacation, and then I went back to it. I'm like, right. I'm definitely not gonna be good at this anymore. So I just kind of stopped playing. That was 3 years ago. I liked that. I liked that it was a little bit different. I like that Neo is another game that's kind of similar in that sense. Put more games out of that are different settings. I think there's room for it, and I think you'd probably be able to reach different people, and I think people would still enjoy it. So I don't know.
I mean, there are a ton of games that are. I made a tweet about this. I was like, man, more developers. Some developers should make a game inspired by Dark Souls, because it feels like every other email I get in my inbox is inspired by Dark Souls. It's like, okay, let's and there's one that just came out called Loot River. That's actually really interesting. Dark Souls meets Tetris almost.
Okay.
And it's like a top-down, like almost like old school Zelda top-down view, and you go and you get on these like puzzle pieces as you're walking through the world and like slashing and fighting enemies, but you can move with the stick the pieces around, and you can get them to fit together in different ways. And sometimes like to get through, you have to like reconfigure all the pieces to squeeze the piece through that you need to like move through the river. It's really interesting. Yeah. I had a good time. I know that Game Informer's like resident indie expert is like, this is one of my favorite games of the year. Like she's like basically platinum trophied it.
Nice. Okay. I'll respect anybody who chases platinums, by the way.
But yeah, so we talked a lot about games, Scott. Let's
get
over to your
I want to talk about
fights
here. At this point. There's enough fights coming up. I mean, this past weekend, I think that's where we should start. Honestly, obviously, there's a big thing coming up that we'll get to too. But let's just come out a little bit of the last weekend. I don't think there's too much to say because it was kind of like it was a fun card, right? First off, it was a lot of fun watching.
It exceeded expectations.
Vegas card absolutely did, because we were kind of low on it, at least in terms of our excitement for it, and they totally delivered. In terms of the action, I think there was 9 finishes, like 5 of them were in the first round. Most of them were on the main card, which was, yeah, man, if you close out the main card with a lot of finishes, I feel like it's a better way to do it than if they were all on the prelims, because,
oh, absolutely.
Because, if you've been watching from the beginning, right? Like if, let's say you're watching the whole card, and there's a lot of us out there that are, and then maybe there's a lot that aren't, right? But if you're sitting there from the beginning and you get 4 out of 5 finishes, like to start with, and then you finish with a bunch of decisions, it feels like such a slog. But if it's the other way around, it's like, okay, we're watching these. It's not great, but we'll push through. I'm looking forward to other fights. You get those fights and they deliver. You forget everything. You're happy, right?
Yeah. And also you're seeing the bigger names doing their thing, right?
And ostensibly, there weren't too many big names, obviously, on this card. We already talked about that. But the heavyweight fight, the headliner between Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Alexander Volkov, delivered because mostly that it only went a few minutes.
Yeah, it was the good type of heavyweight fight.
Yes, the one that just it was like decent action for a little bit, and then it was over. And I forget exactly what the timestamp was on it.
2 minutes,
like
12 seconds.
Thank you. Yeah, it was like 2 to 3 minutes, and yeah, that's what I
know.
Want.
That, by the way, I know that Joe Martinez was the ringside announcer, the ring announcer in this one.
Joe Martinez.
I do as well, but it always makes me laugh whenever Bruce Buffer calls a first round stoppage, because it sounds like he's like rubbing salt in the wound. He's like 2 minutes, 12 seconds of the very first round.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Like, man, that's like it's like dunking on the loser there.
A little bit, yeah. He's
like,
a real
jerk. Out of the
jerk.
First round.
I've never actually met Buff, so I can't really say. But
he seems like a good guy. I mean, I don't know him personally either, but like he seems like a good guy.
But Volkov, obviously, he gets the win. I don't really know what this means for the heavyweight division. It was just kind of a heavyweight fight that happened, and we move forward, right? But like,
it means Rozenstruik's probably gonna have to fight Tom Aspinall after Cyril Gane or whatever. I don't know.
No.
Who's Tom Aspinall fighting? Because Tai Tuivasa is fighting Cyril Gane.
Yeah, he's fighting Curtis Blades, I believe.
Oh man,
and that's in London in just about a month, like a month and a half.
That is a tough home crowd fight.
It is.
Like I feel like Curtis Blades is a tough assignment for. I don't even care if it's Francis Ngannou. Curtis Blades is a tough assignment, even though Francis Ngannou has knocked him out twice or TKO'd him twice.
But that's like the best heavyweight on the planet. So what does
I'm
that
just
mean?
saying, like, even with Francis Ngannou, I would still say Curtis Blades is a tough assignment just because he has that X factor of wrestling.
Well, yeah, that's my point exactly. Like, is he even number 2? I don't know if he's necessarily number 2, but he might be number 3 in the whole world. You know, Curtis Blades, and unfortunately, he may never get the 12. Who knows what happens at heavyweight? Heavyweight's such a mess. That's another conversation, right?
What did you think about this stoppage?
The stoppage was fine. It kind of looked a little funny because I forget who pointed this out, but someone captured how I felt perfectly, and is that Herb Dean makes every stoppage look awkward. It's just the way he does things, because he'll run in and he'll look like he's going to stop it, but then he won't, and then he'll like finally do it. It's like it's almost like he quick twitches too quickly, but he doesn't necessarily act on his instinct as much. I don't know. There seems to be a lot of thinking going on with him.
He does like a cartoon stutter step almost. Like he'll run in and he'll like do that thing where like the leg kind of bounces, like you feel like you hear like the screeching rubber.
He's got to stop doing this. But on the whole, look, he is Rozenstruik, who is the one who's in trouble here, and he's the one who gets stopped, right? His legs buckle. He's definitely hurt. And the moment that the referee sees that this fighter is like out for one reason or another, and I'm not saying that the legs buckling necessarily means that, but if Herb Dean sees something that says this fighter is done, You don't just let them keep going because of the fight. You, as the referee, they're allowed to step in at any point that they feel the fighter is out. You don't necessarily have to give them a chance to wake up. That's not on you. Their job is to protect the fighter from themselves. And in this situation, it sure looked like, especially on further review, it really looked like it was a good stoppage. It didn't look like he's turning away. He's not really into this situation. He's covering up in a way. He's not fighting back, you know? If he's fighting back, because you'll hear them sometimes, they'll be like, fight back, and then they'll step in, right? Usually that's in kind of a ground and pound situation. Almost said our podcast name, Ground Pwned, which is the better way to say it. Ground and pound, just call it that. But I was fine with the stoppage. I don't know if it bothered you, but it didn't bother me.
Watching it live, I thought, oh, that wasn't a terrible stoppage, but it was a little bit early. Watching it on replay, I thought, okay, that wasn't such a bad stoppage. Like, I think it was an early stoppage, like not early stoppage in the sense that like it was too early to be a good stoppage, but I just think like it was on the early end of the good spectrum.
Yeah,
like, there's a spectrum of like the sweet spots right down the middle. I think this was a little bit on the early side, but still in the good part.
Yeah, and that's really all that matters. Like if you can justify it at all, then that's all that matters. Like you may want it to go on, but also you're not the one who's going to deal with the brain trauma that comes from getting hit in the head multiple times by a heavyweight. You know,
100%.
There's a lot to that. You have to kind of weigh, and you know, maybe at a lighter weight or something like that, maybe they let it go a little longer. Although unfortunately we see a lot of women's fights, they actually cut it off sooner. There's a lot of sexism kind of in there. I'm not saying it's intentional, but it certainly seems to come across at times. And I'm not saying any particular referee does this. I don't even think there's a pattern to it, but sometimes there seems to be like let's step in early. But at heavyweight, I kind of want them to step in a little earlier. There's a lot of damage you can do real quick.
Oh yeah, and we saw, again, speaking of Curtis Blades, we saw that with Derek Lewis. And remember his famous line, "That's Herb Dean's fault."
Yeah, oh yeah. But yeah, so I would still rather them at least step in. So I'm okay with it.
Looking at the rest of the card, what steps out or what jumps out for you? Like if somebody needs to go back, like recommend them a fight or two to go back and watch.
Fights with like fights that are worth your time. I'm thinking you should definitely watch a lot of the finishes because there's so many of them. It's like, it's really hard to not recommend watching a bunch of them because they did end so early. A lot of these fights, especially my favorite was O'Day Osborne, who got the win. It was like 61 seconds over Zaruka Dashev. That was not really a great matchup. That was kind of a not so excellent matchup of two guys. And I don't think that was a late replacement either. So yeah, not the greatest. It was really a showcase, I think, for O'Day, who hits really hard for flyweight. You should go watch that. You'll get that in quick. Alonzo Menifield getting the win over Askar Mozarov, who had this weird thing throughout the week where his record went from, he was like 22-7 to start the week, or like 25-7, and then by the time he fought, he was like 19-12 or something ridiculous like that. I don't remember the numbers, but they change all the time, so I don't care if I'm right or wrong. But yeah, he obviously he didn't look ready for prime time against Menifield, who is decent fighter, but I don't think he's a world beater by any stretch. At the time this was match made, maybe you look at it and think, oh, maybe Askar really gives him the challenge, but it didn't look like he had much to offer him there. So, and honestly, the one fight, this would be like for me what the fight of the night was. I think the fight of the night was actually Lucas Almeida and Mike Trezano, but I think the one that I want people to go back and watch is Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Felice Herrig, because there's several reasons here. For one, it was a good fight. It was a pretty solid fight, and there was a lot of stakes here, right? So Karolina Kowalkiewicz is coming in off of what it was like a 5-fight losing streak or something like that. Five losses in a row. Most of them, like we talked about last week, were to former champions of varying divisions from 115 to 105, and this was a woman who was better than her record realistically, and she's going against Felice Herrig, who, that was the last victory that Kowalkiewicz had, but also Herrig's coming off of, as she mentioned after the fight, multiple knee surgeries. There's a lot of do or die to this one, and it looked like, obviously here we have Kowalkiewicz, she did, and so to speak, Felice Herrig died. She called it a career. She said, like, this is kind of it. I wanted to see how I would do, and unfortunately it didn't work out, but yeah, it definitely gets Kowalkiewicz on the high horse, and I think it really gave you the extreme highs that this sport can give emotionally and the lows as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of drama to it. If you're not a big fight fan, but you're interested enough and you maybe care about something more than just like violence, this is a really interesting fight to go watch. So I really hope you go watch that one.
And I almost texted you when Carolina was walking to the cage. I was like, she looks different right now coming out to the octagon than she normally does. Like normally she's just like, she almost looks like happy to be there. Like she's just like kind of there and like smiling at the camera and like nodding along with her song. She changed her song. I think she came out to AC/DC this time.
Okay.
And she was like focused and intense. And I was like, all right, I'm liking what I'm seeing here. But I didn't want to jinx it and be like, I'm liking what I'm seeing with her walkout. And then she goes out and gets knocked out in the first round. But
well, it's funny. I wasn't watching the fights live at that point. I actually came in mid-fight and I had to rewatch the whole fight, right? Because I was out at I think I told you I was at the town's Pride Fest, town's Pride Fest, which is I think we're the first town in like our general area that actually had one of these. So it was like pretty well attended and there was a lot of fun stuff and everything like that. Nice. And which was kind of a funny thing. I'm watching the fights on my phone too. Like I'm trying to watch some of them on my phone. And I was watching Jeff Molina, who of course made a lot of waves during the week because, you know, he said he was going to wear the Pride shorts with the rainbow writing of his name, and then, you know, got a bunch of some negative out there, but then also he got some DMs from people that were like, oh, you know, I'm you know, interested, and he's like, no, that's fine. I'm cool with you, but that's not me. I'm not gay, and that's okay.
Did you catch his post fight rant about the people who were being dicks to him about that?
Oh yeah,
my
God,
went
viral.
That's as big of a win as his win in the octagon.
Yeah. It's like, it is ridiculous though, because I'm sitting there, like I said, I'm watching this from a Pride Fest, and look, I am like him. I'm a cis straight white male, right? Like I'm the most white bread of kind of ways that you could distinguish somebody, like racially, sexually, gender wise, and all that stuff, right? But I support that stuff. I'm perfectly fine with people being who they are. You know, it doesn't affect my life, and really, if it doesn't affect you, like, why should you care?
Yeah. It's so stupid what people like decide to attach themselves to and like rail on people for.
But it was definitely nice to see his rant in the context of mixed martial arts, where we just don't see a lot of support like that. So
exactly,
it was good.
I would also throw out, before we wrap up this recap here, Movsar Evloev might be the biggest winner of the night.
I think he's definitely the biggest winner. Yeah, because he takes the most momentum out of this, right?
Yeah, Volkov obviously had a big win, but like we said, what does that leave him in the division?
What it do? You know, it's nothing.
Evloev is he's a rising star. He gets
a lot of shine here. This is not necessarily a fight I would tell you to go watch unless you really want to watch somebody, you know, beat the tar off of a really good fighter.
Yeah, Ige's no pushover.
Yeah, that if you do watch it, understand the context of Ige he was ahead in the rankings for a reason. He's had some really good wins over the last few years. I feel like he probably peaked at this point. We've seen the best we can of Dan Ige, but he is still a no joke fighter, and he took a lot of punishment from Movsar Evloev, and I think Evloev's really going places. He might be fighting for a title in the next, depending on how frequently that title is able to be defended and how quickly he's able to fight. Could be, I would say, sometime in the next year and a half to 2 years. I could see him getting there.
This fight almost gave me, and don't hear what I'm not saying here, but this fight almost gave me like those early Khabib vibes where it was like, all right, this guy is going to be a problem as he's like coming up the rankings, and it's like, all right, this is his first like real test with Dan Ige, and he passed with flying colors.
Yeah,
like, it was almost like how I felt with like Edson Barbosa when Khabib fought him. It was like, oh, okay, this is what this guy's about. Like, he's going to take down everybody.
I'm actually going to go a little farther back with, and I think this will be an even more apt comparison to what you're trying to make, is the fight with him and Michael Johnson.
That was almost the one that I went with.
I think that one's more fair because it's still just a little earlier in the career, you know? And honestly, even by that point, I looked at Khabib as potentially the best 155er on the planet, because he still hadn't lost, of course, because he retired without a loss, but he had already had a win over Rafael Dos Anjos, like within a year of Dos Anjos becoming the champion. Now, look, could Dos Anjos have gotten drastically better in that time and outpaced Khabib? In theory, sure. But I think we've seen by now that Khabib was a world beater for quite a while. So I have no reason to believe that Khabib wasn't better than Rafael Dos Anjos during that time. He didn't have the belt. You can't give it to him. You can't give him something he didn't earn. But in my mind, I will still look at Khabib as the best lightweight fighter on the planet from, let's say, like 2014 or 15 to 2021. And that's just the way I'm going to feel about it. I don't really care how long he had the belt. That's how I looked at it at the time. There's no hindsight here. This was really how I felt.
But yeah, so that's how I felt about Evloev in this performance, where I was like, oh, okay, this is like his like, statement of intent, basically.
Yeah, there's vibes there. You're right. I think it's a really good comparison to early Khabib, not Khabib now. So, but we'll see if he can realize a lot of that potential. You know, there's still time. There's a lot of good fighters in that division. But if he gets up there, I mean, dude, is his game something that's going to give somebody like, let's say, Max Holloway problems, or even, you know, I don't necessarily want to compare a fight between him and Volkanovski yet, because I think he is still a little farther off, but potentially Max Holloway, if he doesn't get the belt there, I can see him getting a fight with Max within a year even.
You could, yeah. I'm just looking up the featherweight rankings.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a bunch of, obviously there's a really good fight coming to Long Island now with Brian Ortega.
Oh, and
Yair Rodriguez. That's going to be fun.
That is going to be
a good card.
You're going to go there.
I should be covering it. I put in a credential. We just have to make sure that I'm able to get out there with work and everything like that, and make sure my normal desk shift is covered so I can go cover fights. The tricky situation of the way I cover the sport for us, but yeah, it's that should be a fun card. There's a lot of good featherweight fighters though. You're looking at the rankings now, right?
Yeah, I'm just looking at like the division's kind of reloading a little bit here with like the likes of like Arnold Allen. I feel like Josh Emmett's always kind of in the discussion. Meanwhile, Calvin Kattar had his big comeback. Kattar
the following week. We'll be talking about that one next week.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like potential here for like if Volkanovski gets through Holloway a third time, like with just like really interesting and exciting challengers, or like if Yair beats Brian Ortega, like yeah, that's probably your next fight right there.
Yeah, no, I think so. But we got to move forward, because I really want to talk about.
We got a more interesting card to talk about.
We got to talk about the big card that's coming up this weekend for my birthday, and that is UFC 275. There are 2 title fights on tap. If you're not a fight fan, you should know that there are 2 interesting title fights on tap. I think one is more intriguing than the other from a competitive standpoint, whereas the other one is more about watching a woman at the peak of her greatness, having another challenge, which could be an interesting one. Let's start though with the main attraction, Glover Teixeira, who is turning 43 years old later this year, and he is defending his UFC light heavyweight title for the very first time. It is so crazy that he was able to get to the top of the mountain at his age. And after having everyone kind of wrote him off, that he finally got there. So it's really great to see. And he's getting the young buck that I think everybody is kind of looked at as, I don't know if some people are already crowning him now. I think even if you're not, it's hard not to look at him and be like, man, if he doesn't win it now, he might win it next year. He might get another shot next year or something, because Glover's not going to fight that much longer. He's kind of spoken about maybe even the end of this year. He's not beholden to that either. But yeah, there's going to come a time where Glover's gone and maybe Yuri either is the champion already or he's about to be again. So this is a fantastic fight. I'm very interested in this one. And it's not trying to be, hyping you up for something that maybe you're not going to believe in. This is a really interesting fight to me.
I mean, it's hard not to be intrigued by Yuri Prochazka, and that's just because he is like his 2 fights in the UFC so far have been 2 of the most violent fights of the last several years.
Yes. It's funny actually. So I interviewed him. I have a Q&A with him on NY Post, but I asked him, and as a kind of a boilerplate question I ask a lot of fighters for this Q&A feature I do, is what fight from like before your UFC days should people go and watch? And he like basically refused to give me an answer. He's like, I'm a different fighter now. I don't like, just watch the Reyes fight. I'm like, okay, all right. It was like trying to pull teeth. I'm like, I'm just move on. I don't need, it doesn't need the answer.
He's an interesting character.
He is an interesting character. And he does his interviews in English. It's not his first language. He's very clearly still working on it, but he clearly wants to get better at speaking English. And I really appreciated that, because it makes it easier for us to communicate if he's trying to communicate in the way that I'm going to write up, even if I have to clean up language and that kind of thing, just to make it more, let's say, natural English. But
yeah, that also makes it that makes it almost more intimidating though. Like the broken English, like that's what it was. Again, Khabib, like in his early days when he like barely spoke English, like that made him so much scarier when like he would go to the post-fight press conference and he goes, I smish.
I think he leaned into it, though. I think he was someone who knew that. I think
now he gets it.
The funny thing is he's not a natural promoter in the sense, but he has like a sense of Khabib we're talking about. He has this sense of like the way to present himself to the world as like this like stoic Russian. I think he's familiar with the trope and he leans into it. And he really is just great with one-liners. He for some reason, some people are just natural with that stuff. And he really was, or still is, I guess. He doesn't fight anymore. But I think if you asked him to do it, he could probably do it again.
Probably, yeah. But back to Yuri.
And Glover, of course, yeah.
Like, I remember when Glover won, my first tweet was like, I'm so happy he finally broke through and won the belt. And then my second tweet was, please don't make Glover fight Yuri. Because I don't want to see what happened to Reyes happen to him. And I do think that Glover actually has a decent shot of winning this, because we saw what happened when Reyes took Yuri down in their fight. Like, Reyes kind of had his way with him for a while. And if Glover gets him down, I don't know if he's going to be able to stop a submission.
Glover is very resilient too. And I think
we saw Santos just basically take Glover's head off and he kept pushing forward.
I mean, even if you go all the way back to the beginning of the pandemic, it was one of the first fights coming out of the pandemic in Jacksonville. And it was Glover Teixeira headlining against Anthony Lionheart Smith. And Anthony Smith was winning that fight for a little while. And then all of a sudden
until he wasn't.
Turned. And I mean, he lost a tooth. Lionheart Smith did. And I mean, we're talking about that. That's one of those fights that, you know, I talk about judging on my show all the time. That's a fight that I think realistically, you don't see a lot of 10-7s in the world. Like that actually would be a 10-7 by a judge's definition. And they didn't get one this time. But I've talked to several judges who would actually say, you know what? That might be a 10-7. That really might be a 10-7.
Well, that was the one where, again, you said it was one of like the first ones without a crowd. And that was the fight that I realized, oh, this is like a different game, because like you could hear Glover apologizing to Anthony Smith while basically pounding his face and say, hey, I'm so sorry. Like this. And Anthony's like, it is what it is, man.
Yeah. He just kind of like, that's what we're here to do. Right.
Yeah. So like that was when I was first like, oh my God, like not having a crowd here is going to be a game changer. That and when Gaethje and Ferguson were doing their thing, and you know, you just heard the successive smacks of Justin Gaethje's gloves up against Tony Ferguson's head, and it's just like, oh.
I laugh now at the growing pains of the commentary team figuring out that Daniel Cormier cannot just shout like he would normally do, because he's kind of like everyone's hearing it. And I think him and Michael Bisping to a degree were like almost like leaning into like their instructions. I think Bisping realized earlier, he's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. And DC like almost kind of leaned more into it.
Do you remember when I think it was Hooker fighting Poirier?
Yes. And Poirier's talking
Hooker kicked him in the groin twice or something like that. And Bisping goes, oh, that's twice that he's hit him in the groin. That's twice he's done a low blow. And he's like, he's got to be careful with those. And Poirier goes, listen to Bisping.
Yeah. I miss those. Honestly, look, it's nice that this crowd's back. It's nice that the world's normalizing all that stuff. But like legitimately, I liked watching fights better with no crowd from home. I actually liked it better. I know there's kind of both sides to it, but man, I like hearing everything that's going on in the cage. I think it's a fascinating feel.
I like that in some ways, but in the other ways, it was literally just this past card that I was watching, and I was like, this feels like I'm watching like a local promotion, because like there's like I heard like I forget what fight it was, but there was like a little kid. It might have been the De Silva what's his face fight. Where there was Solecki and De Silva.
Joe Solecki and Alex De Silva.
There was a little kid that was in the apex, like screaming, like how, like if you've ever been to like a wedding or like a church service and like everybody's quiet and then you hear a little kid do something.
Yeah, that's my kid.
That's what it felt like. It was like, oh my God, this is like a local like community hall fight that we're watching here. And it's like everybody was quiet while there was like some grappling exchange going on against the cage. And then you hear a little kid screaming, and it's like, this feels like not the UFC.
By the way, true story. You made me remind me of this, but on Easter this year, so we're only talking about within the last 2 months, we were at church service on Easter. My wife is raising our kids Catholic. She's Catholic. I'm not. I'm Presbyterian. It's like the same thing, but no Pope, and we're a little more flexible in our views of certain things in the world. But anyway, we're at church, and I'm sitting next to, I want to say they're like they had to be like in their late teens. Like, I don't think these are like old folks by any stretch. They're like young people. And one of them like scolded me because one of my kids was being a little louder than they would have liked. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, these are, what do you want them? You want me to take my kids out of church? How are you going to get more Catholics if you don't welcome the children? And meanwhile, all of the, like, let's say older folks, you know, people who are older than myself, all of them, they just think the kids are great. They've been going to church forever. They're not missing anything. They know what it is. It's you go there for spiritual awakening, and then, or maybe you just go because your wife dragged you. I don't know, but you know, it doesn't matter. Anyway, that's my tangent. I had to get that out.
So you don't like giving predictions?
No, I don't. I'd really prefer not to, but
this one is one of the harder ones to predict. I feel like the headliner between Glover and Yuri.
Here's one prediction I'll give: it's not going the distance.
I don't think so either, but you know, we've said that before and it has. But
this one, I would say God, I can't see it, sir.
I mean, because you could see it going either way. You could see Yuri going in there and knocking Glover unconscious in the first round, or you could see Glover going in there, catching one of Yuri's crazy spinning kicks, taking him down, and then methodically moving into a position for a submission. And it's like, I just don't know. I think maybe the knockout from Yuri is a little bit more likely. But at the same time, Glover, he has a chin, he's super resilient, and he's going to keep coming forward and trying to do his thing.
Yeah, the only thing you got to wonder about Glover is, you know, he is, like I said, he's more than 42 and a half years old. He'll be 43 in October.
When's it going to catch up to him?
When will it catch up? And not only that, like, is it just harder to show up day of when you've been through that much experience and that old? He started fighting 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Today, actually, this episode releases on June 7th. 20 years ago today is the anniversary of his first fight.
Didn't he train Shuto box?
He's been at a bunch of different places, but when he got to
now he's in Connecticut. But
when he got to the United States, he was training with Chuck Liddell out there. So that was really his team. So like, you remember Chuck was just like, he was beside himself, excited for Glover, which was a beautiful thing to watch too.
Yeah,
you know, a legend.
I love that they recorded a video.
I know,
of Chuck as Glover won. Like, that made me happy because I remember those days.
That's the type of stuff that's
hyping
beautiful. Him up. That's beautiful about this sport. Absolutely, being happy for other people, celebrating other people's success, that kind of thing. It's one of the things that I think makes martial arts so wonderful, and that's why I hate the direction a lot of it goes nowadays, where it's just so disrespectful. Like I just don't get into that kind of stuff. But this fight, you never know if Glover shows up and he's a little older. I don't know. Could he be just fine? Absolutely. I could see him winning. I could see Yuri going in there and, like you said, almost knocking his head off. It could be a fun fight. He could get submitted. You look at Yuri, especially, you look at his record. His record is not one of somebody who is, I don't even want to say point fighting, but he leaves it all out there. He's very kill or be killed, you know? And I just don't think, I'm pretty sure anyway, like, anything can happen. Don't bet or something like that based on what I'm talking about. But man, I just feel like he's either going to have it, he's going to knock his head off, or he's going to put himself out there and it's not going to work out, and Glover's going to finish him off, because Glover is no joke.
Here are two predictions I will give you for the two fights under this fight.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Taila Santos is going to come into the cage, and she's Taila.
That's Taila, Taila.
Taila Santos is going to come into the cage. She's going to look confident. And then when she gets actually into the fight with Valentina, she's going to try to implement her game plan. And then when it doesn't work, she's going to start looking a little bit lost, because Valentina is one of those fighters where a lot of people think they have the code cracked, and then they get in there and it's like, oh my God, like, this is so much more challenging than I could have ever imagined. Like, she's so much better than I could have imagined. I think that's what's going to happen. Taila is going to go in there with a lot of confidence, and she's
Valentina
going to,
Shevchenko's just going to be,
and Valentina's just going to Valentina, right? Like, she's like, it's like how people used to look with John Jones, where it's like they would go into the cage and they'd be like, I know how to beat him. And then they would just kind of like freeze, right? So like, oh my God, now I'm standing across the octagon from John Jones. Or like how people used to be with like Max Holloway, where it's like, I know how to, like, Calvin Kattar thought he knew how to beat Max Holloway, and then he was just frozen by him in a lot of senses.
I look at this fight as Valentina Shevchenko is better at the thing that Taila Santos is best at. And from there, I think she's just better in every other way. Could I be wrong? 100% for sure. But yeah, it's hard to look at this fight as anything other than, at least from my perspective, just another Valentina Shevchenko title defense in waiting.
Well, that's the thing.
But this is like a legit fight. Like there's not that many other fights. She's already beaten most of the top women. And there's kind of like, to borrow your phrase you were saying with featherweight division, it's reloading. I think there's some new contenders coming up. Some of them are farther off than we thought, like Erin Blanchfield. I think she had a nice win over the weekend in the prelim opener, but she definitely showed that she's got room to grow in her striking. But her submission grappling, her wrestling, that kind of thing, those are areas that I think are her sweet spots, but she's far off. People like Manon Fiorot, the French, that was Caitlin Chukagian calls it the French girl. Right. Yeah, the French girl, she can get it.
Or whatever. The commentary just calls her Manon Fior for some reason.
Oh God, it might be Fior. I'm very bad with the pronunciation.
I thought it was Fiorot. I think that's the correct
they've said it a bunch of different ways. I think I'm trying to remember. Lucas Grandsire, who covers the sport, he is French, I believe, and he made a little video of like there's I guess a few ways that are like sort of acceptable to say her name. And I want to say it is Fior.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was probably saying it wrong. Go find Lucas Grandsire's video. He's a good follow anyway.
So the other prediction that I have, Weili Zhang, Joanna Jędrzejczyk is not going to be the banger that it was in that first fight, because
it can't be.
They got 3 rounds, which, if you believe like the whole thing about like Gaethje and Chandler being 3 rounds intentionally, so that way they just go all out. I think there's going to be more of a feeling out process because they know what the other one is capable of, and they both kind of have a lot to lose in this fight.
I think it's part of that, but it's also part just, they've probably thought about things more in general, and now they're going to approach it a little more thoughtfully. That kind of thing. The rematches never play out the same way. They just don't. Like,
also,
you can find an exception, but
Joanna hasn't fought since.
Yeah, it's been more than 2 years.
That's wild.
Yeah. What is she going to look like in there? I mean, I'm sure she
looks like she's in great shape, but
physically, I'm sure she's in terrific shape, but it's been a while since she fought, and maybe that's a good thing for her. Maybe taking time off for the first time in her career really is going to be a good thing for her resetting and that kind of thing. Or maybe I don't know, because Zhang Weili has been training very hard. She's been training at different camps since then, and that you have to think has probably helped her increase her level of skill and her well-roundedness by leaps and bounds. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I'm super excited for it because that fight, their first fight, which happened right before the pandemic took hold of the world, it was still kind of just like, this thing isolated to China and Korea and all that kind of thing, right? But now it had taken over. But that was one of my favorite fights ever when that fight happened. Yeah. I was so enthralled with it. I thought it was fantastic. And,
followed immediately by Izzy and Romero,
which was one of the worst championship fights ever. Yeah, so it was kind of a mixed bag, that one.
I mean, that's like when we had Rose and Carla, and then immediately followed by Oliveira Gaethje, and it's like, I'm glad that came last. I'm glad that Oliveira Gaethje came last.
Exactly. At least it was that.
So before we wrap up on this, do we have any other fights that you think we need to make sure we're watching?
I would say the question that I think I would want to answer for people is, because obviously you're going to buy the pay-per-view, you're going to get 5 fights with this anyway. Like I imagine if you're spending $75 on this pay-per-view, you really should just watch everything. So I imagine you'll watch all those things. But from the prelim perspective, that obviously comes along, quote unquote free with your ESPN subscription or your ESPN Plus subscription. On the prelims, I'm interested in Danag Bakary going against Kyung Ho Kang, and I like what Bakary brings to the table. He's like a finisher, I think there's a chance this one goes the distance anyway, because I think Kyung Ho Kang is often fighting fights that kind of go the distance, but I think that would be a good point to start in. And I'll probably go off at I want to say 7:30 or something like that.
So yeah, bantamweight is, I mean, quickly becoming the second best, undoubtedly, division in the UFC.
Yeah, there's always the hot debate: is that the best or is it second?
I think
best
it's second best. I think lightweight is still lightweight's been it for 7-8 years now, and I don't think we've talked about that.
I feel like we can kind of lock in on that as that way we feel, right? Is there anything on the prelims that jumps out at you?
I mean, I guess Jake Matthews and Andre Filiot. And the reason for that is I mean, this card's taking place in Singapore. And I think a lot of the fights here are geared towards that audience where I unfortunately don't know a lot of the fighters. Like, it's the same thing when they go to Australia or New Zealand, like they put a lot of like Oceania fighters on there to cater to that audience.
Well, it also
same thing with like the London cards.
Purposes, yeah. You know, I mean, Jake Matthews is an Aussie fighter. They I think probably a lot of it is convenience. Joshua Kulibao is fighting against Sungwoo Choi. We're talking about two fighters who are coming from, let's say, similar time zones, much similar to that than, say, the United States is.
I'm looking at, I mean, this isn't a prelim, but I'm most excited, I think, for Rogerio Bontorin versus Manel Kape. I know that's on the main card as of now, anyway.
Yeah.
Order subject to change. However,
that's okay. You can be excited for that.
That is a great looking fight on paper, anyway.
What about Jack Della Maddalena?
Yeah, I'm in for that as well.
The only thing is, so
Ramazan
he's exciting. He's an interesting prospect, but he's going against Ramazan Amiev, who is a lot of his fights end up being like kind of wet blanket fights. So that's kind of the danger there. It could go one way or the other. That's a very I don't know feeling with that fight.
I'm sad that we lost Whitaker Vittori on this card.
Yeah, that would have been a big boost. Unfortunately, it sucked a lot of the prestige out of the, let's say, under those top three fights, which are just phenomenal top three fights, I think.
Yeah.
But after that, it changes the makeup a little bit.
So what do you give this card on our 5-star scale?
Ooh, yeah, I guess that's a little bit. We have to rate these a little differently because the fight nights are kind of being graded on a different curve, right?
Yeah, because you got to pay $75 for this one.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we do this for a pay-per-view? Let's just rate whether the pay-per-view main card, which is the only part you have to pay for, right? These 5 fights. We talked about the 2 title fights, Joanna Whaley. We talked about Bontorin and Kape, and we talked about Madalena and Amiev. Those 5 fights. Is this card worth your full $75 to you?
So here's the funny thing. I will not be paying $75 for this, but that's because I'm going to be out in Los Angeles this week, and I don't get back until Sunday late.
Nothing to do with the quality of it.
But I would have spent $75 on it. I'm actually going to try to gather together a bunch of people in the games industry to find a bar and watch at least the top 3 fights on this card.
Sure. So probably hopefully by 11ish, you guys are finding somewhere to. I guess over there it'll be 8 o'clock.
It'll be 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I have some stuff I have to take care of on Saturday night for work, like mixers and stuff to go to and networking. But I want to try to find a bar that's showing these fights because I desperately want to catch those top 3 fights. However, if I was at home, this would be a lock for me to drop $75, $80 after tax.
Without any sort of hesitance or anything like that. So you would say it's probably a full $75 if you had to let's just rate it on terms of money. Do you think it's worth the 75? Is it just 70? Yeah. I don't know.
No. Let's not do a sliding. That muddies the water. I'm going to say that it's worth the 75.
Okay. All right.
I mean, what it would take for me to say no would be if either Zhang Yunjacek fell off or the top card or the top fight fell off with Glover and Yuri.
So it's not as much to do with Valentina as we're saying. It seems like that's a fight that really
that's a fight that I want to see, right? Just because it's nice to see Jordan win his 5th or
you want to watch greatness,
whatever championship, right?
You want to be there for greatness. I can understand that.
Yeah, that's the thing with Nunes and how Rousey used to be. It's all right, we knew that Rousey was just going to run through Betch Correia, but it was nice to see it happen, right? It was nice to be a part of that, or you want to witness Israel Adesanya doing another title defense in dominant fashion because you want to see greatness as it happens.
And that is there's the funny thing with Valentina here is look, she is great, but not all of her fights end up being, let's say, the most engaging fights. If she isn't dominant and kind of finishes it off early, it often ends up being this kind of she's just totally outclassing her opponent, and it may not be the most interesting one, especially if the other woman is not willing to cooperate, as we kind of saw with the fight against Liz Carmouche a few years ago. That one was
Chookagian.
Yeah, Chookagian too, but she finished Chookagian.
But it was a very slow going fight until then.
But at least we didn't watch 3 more rounds of it, right? I think it was round 2 finish. So there was some mercy there. Yeah, if you have like this full 5-round fight, and I could see Tyler Santos being tough enough that she's able to kind of gut this out. I hope she's able to make it a fight. Like I don't want to write her off entirely, but I think we're kind of in that zone where it's just hard to see anyone giving her a real challenge, Valentina.
Well, it's one of those things where, again, like I hope she's not frozen by Valentina. I just think Valentina is just such a puzzle to solve for anybody. But what I want to happen if Valentina wins, I want her to fight the winner of Nunes and Pena.
Okay, so you really want, I guess one of them is they're both, either way, it's a rematch.
Yeah, well, exactly.
It's a rematch or it's a trilogy fight.
Well, think about it. If Pena beats Nunes, Valentina took it to Pena several years ago, but still.
Well, she was losing. I think she was, if I remember right, she was losing the fight until the second round. She was able to kind of turn it around, and then she got a finish on the ground against essentially a ground specialist. People thought of Pena as more of a ground specialist at that point. And of course, Shevchenko is she came from the Muay Thai world, but she's a very well-rounded mixed martial artist. Yeah. I spoke to her last week too, and she was saying basically like that she does miss the competitive spirit of the Muay Thai world, but realistically she really prefers MMA because there's no limits. You can do anything you want. She really likes that. And that's interesting to hear from someone who came from the Muay Thai world and has mastered the sport that includes everything else, right?
Did you ask her if she's a spy?
I did not. I was kind of worried about
that question.
I was worried about what would happen to me if I asked, because I mean, what if she tells me yes? Am I allowed to have that on tape, or am I just going to be done for?
Well, we saw from Ariel's video, she's not going to say yes. She's very insistent that she is not a spy.
Yeah.
I think we've done it.
I think we have too. I think we managed to get in a lot of stuff and have a lot of fun. So, that being the show for the week, I hope you liked what you heard. And if you did, be sure to subscribe. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you are listening to the dulcet tones of my voice and Brian's. And while you're at it, make sure you kindly subscribe to our social handles at Brian P. Shea and at Scott_Fontana on Twitter and Instagram.
And if you want to reach us with questions, feedback, topics you'd like to hear us talk about, or just letting us know what you're hyped about, you can hit us up at groundandpwnedpod@gmail.com or at groundandpwned on Twitter. Until next time, enjoy the fights, enjoy the games, and we will talk to you with another jam-packed episode next week.